Do you get angry when you tell your wife what it is that you want more connection, more intimacy, more affection, that you want to be able to open up and spend time together and really connect with each other, that you want some joy, you want some fun, you want some pillow talk, that you really want to be able to enjoy your lives together, and she just seems very disinterested? Does that make you angry? Hi, I'm Charlie McKeever, your Happy Man coach, and here's why that makes you angry. It makes you angry because you're in this mental space of feeling very dependent on her to give you what it is that you want. You feel dependent on her to behave in a certain way, for her to express interest, for her to value you, for her to want to spend time with you, right? For her to want the same things that you want. And that dependency is what is making you angry. And here's how I know. If you've ever been a boy who was wrestling, who was pinned down by a brother, an uncle, a friend, a father, anybody, and you're wrestling, you're having fun, you're laughing, and then that other person pins you to the floor, and they've kind of won, right? But now they threaten to not let you up. They say, I'm not going to let you up. You can't get up. No, right? No, you can't get up. And they push you down on the floor, and you try to get up, and you struggle. And all of a sudden, you start getting upset. You start feeling it well up in you, right? And it starts making you mad, and you start getting angry, and you push against them, and they push you back down on the floor. And then what happens is that emotion bubbles up. It becomes so overwhelming. It becomes so strong that you actually collapse into tears, right? That you start crying, that you collapse into sadness and depression. This is what happens when we feel powerless as a man. When we feel powerless as a man, we either have one of two emotions that bubble up. One is anger, right? And anger can be frustration. It can be being perturbed, being upset, right? These are varying degrees of the same thing. When we have these words are representative of certain varying degrees of an emotion, right? So anger might feel like a very strong word to you in watching this video, but you might also feel frustrated or confused or perturbed or upset or, right, disappointed. There might be some version of that we're talking about. But a lot of guys will say, it upsets me, it makes me mad. Right? Another word, it makes me mad. Or we'll feel sad. We'll feel depressed. Because in that place of dependency, where we don't feel like we have any choice, we don't have any control, we feel powerless. And when we feel powerless, then we start to emotionally kind of crumble, start to collapse, because we start to lose hope. We don't know the path forward, and it feels very heavy. And one of the ways that we cope with that is we shut down, right? We shut down, even if it's for a small period of time, having a day, having a morning, having a week where we feel sad, where we feel depressed. This is how we're coping with this sense of hopelessness, this sense of powerlessness, because we're dependent on her. We need her. We want her to respond to us in a certain way, and she's not doing it, right? She's not doing it either because she doesn't have the capacity to do it, or she doesn't have the desire to do it, and in both of those stories, we have this story in our head that says she should. And when she doesn't, then we add a therefore. She should behave this way, but she doesn't, so therefore, that must mean something about me. It must mean something about my future. It must mean something about what's possible for me, because I'm dependent on this other person mentally, right? I am believing that this other person has what I need, that I can only get it from them, and that they don't give it to me, then I'm choiceless, I'm powerless. But that's us believing our own thoughts about what's going on. So when we have better thoughts, right, when we break that cycle, when we break that story, when we realize, when we click over from that sadness into acceptance, that, okay, well, she's not, no matter how much we beg, how much we tell her what we want, it doesn't seem to move the needle. It doesn't produce the result. So now what we need to do is we have to accept what's going on in front of us. We have to accept it, and then we have to ask ourselves questions about it. What do I want? Right? What do I think about this? What do I feel? Now the problem is many times we've spent so much time trying to please other people. We're trying to make other people happy so that we could get our needs met, that we haven't spent any time thinking about what we want. And so it can be daunting, it can be overwhelming to start trying to think about, what do I want? And we may not even give ourselves permission to want those things, right? We may try to strong arm ourselves into saying, well, you shouldn't want that. That's not okay, right? You're being selfish. All these internal conversations that just aren't true. It's a low value story about ourselves. But we can get to this place where we can say, you know what, hold on. It's okay for her to not want to do these things, to not want to spend time with each other. That's okay, right? Not that I have to lay down and accept that and let that be my reality, but it's okay for her to want what she wants, and it's okay for me to want what I want, right? Neither one of us are a victim, neither one of us are a villain, neither one of us are good or bad. We have desires, and those desires aren't aligned. And I help guys with this all the time, because when we're in this place where we feel angry, when we feel angry about what she's not giving us, our pain is inflamed. It's so loud that we can't think straight, that we can't work our way through this, because we have so many competing voices going on in our head. We have us in there, the us that's always been us since as far back as we can remember. And then we also have the inner critic, the inner judge, the inner pusher, the pusher that tells us we're not doing enough and that we should do more. We have the inner good son, we have the inner good father. We have this story about how things are supposed to go or how they should go. And that's what's getting in our way. That's what's causing us problems, right? Because we have all of these competing voices going on at one time. And one of the things, there's a squirrel over there. I was like, what is that back there? One of the things that we have to do is we need to talk with another man. We need to talk with another man, because men understand men, women understand women. And we need to talk with another man where we can express these things, where we can get them out. We can get them out of our head and get them out into the world here. We can write them down on paper. We can say them out loud. We can hear ourselves saying it. And that man can listen, and he can be curious, and he can ask questions. He can mirror back to us, echo back to us our words, so that we can hear them. He can challenge some of our assumptions. He can say, well, you say that like it's a fact, but is that true? And we may not have ever even considered challenging those thoughts, right? We may not have ever considered the fact that we could challenge those thoughts. And so it's helpful to sit across from another man, either on the phone or on Zoom or in person, and say, I don't know. I never really even thought about whether or not that's true, right? And then we can, in challenging those thoughts, we can say, okay, well, do I want to believe that? Is there a better story? Is there something else that I can support, right? That a story that I can live into? What can I make choices for myself? And this is where we start to have a sense of having personal agency, that we can make choices for ourselves, that it's okay for us to make choices for ourselves, that we're not a bad person because we have desires, and we have desires that are different than someone else. We've just gotten into this place where everything's so enmeshed, right? So everything's so fused. We've got this tangled up hairball that we need to unravel. And that's what I help men do. I help them unravel the hairball so that they can experience something different in their lives. It doesn't necessarily have to mean the blow up of their relationship, the end of their marriage, but it does mean the end of what's not working for them. That if they feel like they've been starving for the last 20 years, that it's time for them to take ownership of their desires, ownership of themselves, ownership of their life, and start making choices for themselves, because they have the power to do that. We all have the power to do that, and we'd be so willing to give somebody else permission to live their own life, but we're not giving ourselves permission to live ours. So go to happymancoaching.com, fill out my contact form, schedule a call. Let's get on the phone together. Let's talk about what's going on. Let's get down to what's really going on. And I guarantee you, after that call, you're going to feel stronger. You're going to feel clearer. You're going to feel more confident about where you are, where you're going, what you want for yourself, and how to get there. All right, brother. happymancoaching.com. I look forward to talking to you soon.